We begin the Gemara at the last two lines, or last two words actually, at the bottom of the Yomud, Daf Nun Ches Amud Beis, Omarav. So the Gemara here brought various different stages in the takana that Chachamim instituted regarding the situation of the Sikrikin, these violent goyim that came and confiscated property from Yidden. And then the final takana was the takana that Rebbe instituted, that once this property remained in the hand of the Sikrikin for 12 months, so then any Yid can go and buy it from him, as long as he pays the original owner the difference of that cheap price that he got. And we don't give the original owner the preference or the choice to go and buy it first. So here the Gemara just finishes off this inyan with a general inyan regarding how this takana was made. Because the lashon of the Mishnah was that after the other takanas they made before, so Rebbe came and took account, and from the Tanoim that were with him, he instituted this new takana. So on this the Gemara says, Omarav, Ano Havoi b'minyana de Rebbe. I was there when they took this count to institute this takana that whoever wants could go and take this property from the Sikrikin. And then Rabbi said, Rav that is said, Uminoi didi manu bereisha. And they began with the count. They started from me first. We were sitting there in front of Rebbe, and he took a count to see if everybody agrees to institute this new takana, and they started the count from me. And Rashi explains what Rav was saying is that he was either, Rashi has one pshat, he was just a regular student, he wasn't from the greatest of the students, or Rashi says, Anisha Maiti, that he was from the youngest or from the smallest of the students. So when they took the count, they counted from the smallest and they worked their way up. Frag the Gemara, but why is that so? We learned in the Mishnah in Sanhedrin, Dine Mominis Vahataris, when it comes to subject of money matters. And when it comes to the halachas of Taris and Tumis, and you have to take account regarding a halacha or to institute a halacha, Maschilin min agadol. So you begin counting from the greatest. You should always start with the greatest. So over here, there's no reason not to start from the greatest. Only when it comes to a dintayra regarding life and death, dinei nefashis, over here, you don't begin from the greatest, you begin from the one that's on the side, from the smallest. And the reason for this is because it says Leisana al Riv Lintais, and Rashi says that the Gemara there teaches that it goes on dinei nefashis, that if you have someone in dinei nefashis, the greatest is going to come and say a psak in one way, so then Leisana al Rav, it's darshan, you can't go and say against him. But the Torah wants you to be able to be malamet zchus, that everyone else should be able to say their opinion and to find a merit for this person that is not chayiv misa. So therefore we can't begin with the greatest, so then no one else could come and argue with him. So therefore we have to start with the smallest. That's by dinei nefashis. But by dinei mominis, we do begin from the one that was the greatest. So the question is, what was Rav saying when he said that over here, when they made this takana, which is dinei mominis, they began from him, and he was either just a plain student, a Beinoni student, or he was from the smallest, from the youngest of them. Amar Rabbi Berei Rava, so Rabbi Berei Rava answers, V'teimer Rav Hillel, Berei Rav Veilas, Shani Minyana de Rebbe. When they took account by the Rebbe, it's different. The Kula Minyana Menatzad Havon, Maschilan. They always took the count and began from the youngest, from the smallest, and not from the greatest, even by dinei mominis. So Rashi over here explains that's because they teach this pasuk of Leisana al Riv, and you read it Leisana al Rav, that you shouldn't argue with the greatest, that it refers not only to dinei nefashis, but it refers to all dinei mominis. Anytime that they're taking account of paskan and din, you should always start with the smallest, because if you start with the greatest, then nobody can go and argue with him. That's the pshat that Rashi says here. Taisus brings, and Rashi says this also in Sanhedrin, that it's because Rebbe was an onav. He was very humble. So if you would start with the greatest, who was the greatest in the room? It was Rebbe himself. So he didn't want to show that he's the greatest in the room. So therefore he would start with the smallest. Sagt die Gemara weiter. V'amar Rabbe berei der Rave v'yiteme Rab Hillel berei der Rab Veilas. Mimais Moshe v'ad Rebbe, from the generation of Moshe until Rebbe Rabbeinu HaKadosh. We don't find that there should be in a generation one individual that he should be greater than everybody else, and he should have both Torah and Gedula and greatness together. Now what's the type of Gedula? So here Rashi says Gedula means that he's great also in his riches, and another place Rashi says Gedula is lav dafke de oisher, but it refers to the fact that he's a leader, he's the greatest leader amongst Yidden. So the point here the Gemara is saying is that only in the times of Moshe Rabbeinu was he the single individual that was greater than everybody else, Sorry. And similar in the generation of Rebbe was greater than everybody else. We don't find that in any other generation in between. So the Gemara asks, and this Veloy, we don't find in any other generation that there were other individuals that had both the Torah and greatness together. But how about Yeshua? But how about the student of Moshe Rabbeinu? Yeshua also was very great in Torah. He learned all the Torah of Moshe Rabbeinu, and he was the leader of Gittin. So he was great also, the only greatest person in his generation. And says the Gemara, but by Yeshua, it wasn't Yeshua alone, because Havel Lazar, together with Yeshua, there was also a Lazar that was with him. Fragt the Gemara, but how about the next generation? Havel Lazar. But Elazar, after Yeshua passed away, so then Elazar was the greatest in his generation. He had Torah Gedula alone, higher and greater than everyone else. And says the Gemara, he wasn't alone, because Have Pinchas, together with him was his son Pinchas, that was also great like his father, and therefore there were two. Fragt the Gemara, but then when Elazar passed away, Have Pinchas, so then Pinchas alone was the greatest in his generation. And says the Gemara, he wasn't Pinchas alone, because Hav was Zekanim. The Zekanim, they actually were Makabal the Torah from Yeshua, but they lived longer and later, and they were there even in the time of Pinchas, and therefore wasn't Pinchas alone. Fragt the Gemara, but in a later time, Hav Shaul HaMelech was very great in Torah. And he also was a king, and he was a leader, and he had Gedula as well. So how could you say, and he was alone in his generation the greatest? And says the Gemara, but Hav Shmuel it is. Together with Shaul, there was also Shmuel in his times. So he wasn't alone the greatest. Fragt the Gemara, but at a certain point, Shmuel passed away before Shaul passed away. And in that time, Shaul was the greatest. And says the Gemara, Kulu Shani Kamrina. You're right, for a certain period of Shaul HaMelech's life, he was Take Teira Geduli, was the greatest in his times. But over here, what was being said before is that only by Moshe Rabbeinu and by Rabbeinu HaKadosh, their entire lifetime, when they had Torah Gedula, it was alone, with nobody else. Over here, there was a time period that Shaul wasn't alone, it was together with Shmuel. Fragt the Gemara, but for David, later you had David HaMelech, that was great in Torah, and in Gedula was a king, and he was alone, the greatest in his generation. And says the Gemara, there was someone else as well in his time. Have Ira Hayairi. There was a person by the name of Ira Hayairi, which is brought in Tanakh, and the Gemara says about him that he taught all the Chachamim Torah, and everyone was sitting in front of him, including David HaMelech, sat in the ground on pillows and blankets, and they sat and heard Torah from him. So there was another individual together with David HaMelech. Again, the Gemara asks, but v'ha nach nafshe. He passed away before David HaMelech, and then David HaMelech was the greatest. Answers the Gemara, Kulu Shani Bina. But again, the point here is, we're looking to see, was there anybody that his entire lifetime was the only one that was the greatest in Torah and Gedula? Fragt the Gemara, but Shloime Melech, he was great in Torah and Gedula, and he was alone in his generation. Answers the Gemara, no, have a Shimi ben Gera. There was an individual by the name of Shimi ben Gera that was also very great and great in Torah. Fragt the Gemara, but Vaha Kotle. What ended up happening is that Shloime Melech had him killed. So then Shloime Melech was alone in Torah and Gedula. Answers the Gemara again, Kulu Shani Kamrina. But it wasn't the entire lifetime of Shloime Melech. Fragt the Gemara, have Chizkiah. But Chizkiah was also a king, and he was also great in Torah, and he was the greatest in his generation. Answers the Gemara, have Shevna. There was Shevna in his time period. He was also very great in Torah, as Rashi brings from the Gemara in Sanhedrin, how Shevna darshan in Torah, and he was also very great. Fragt the Gemara, but Shevna was killed, and Rashi brings he was killed by Sancherev. So again the Gemara answers, Kulu Shani Kamrina. But still, it wasn't the entire lifetime of Chizkiah that he was alone, great in Torah and Gedula. Fragt the Gemara, Ezra. There was Ezra that was the greatest in his time, both in Torah and Gedula. Answers the Gemara, along with him, there have Nehemiah ben Chachalia. Together with him, there was another individual. Nehemiah was also very great in Torah and Gedula. Okay, so that's the conclusion. So therefore comes out that from Moshe until Rabbeinu HaKadosh, there was no other individual that had Torah Gedula b'makom echad, that in an oifen, that he was the greatest of everybody in the generation. I can say as well that Mimois Rebbe, from the time period of Rebbe, which authored and put together the Mishnayos, Va'ad Rav Ashi, until the time of Rav Ashi, which Ravina and Rav Ashi together put together the Gemara, we don't find Torah and greatness together in one place. So on this the Gemara asks, V'loi, do we not find someone else that was great in Torah? And also he had Gedula in his time. For Hahave Hune Bar Nosson. There was Hune Bar Nosson that had both Torah and Gedula in his times. What's unique about Hune Bar Nosson that the Gemara points out from all the other Amiraim? So Taisus over here brings a few things. One of the things Taisus brings is a famous Gemara in Zvachim that describes how Hune Bar Nosson was there together with the king, and he had his belt that was not put on properly, and the king fixed his belt for him. And the Gemara says on that the Eibishter fulfilled for him the prophecy that it says about when Mashiach comes, V'hayu malachim umnayach, that kings will be taking care of you. So we see how he had Torah, he was very great in Torah, but he also had greatness that he had even a king taking care of him. So the Gemara answers, but nevertheless, Shani Hune Bar Nosson, the Meichav Havachayev Leila Ravashi. He was still subdued to Ravashi. Ravashi taught him Torah, so therefore you can't say that he was as great as Ravashi. Ravashi was the greatest in his times, and Hune Bar Nosson was under him. Continuing with the next Mishnah, Zok Heilige Mishnah, Cheresh. So all these Mishnayos here again are discussing matters which Chachamim were Mesaken, Tikkun Ha'ilam, and different things that Chachamim were Mesaken. So Cheresh, a person that's deaf-mute, Roimez v'nirmaz. He's able to signal with his hands or with his head regarding different matters that regarding a sale and the things that he can do. So even though he has no das and really minat Torah, a Cheresh is like the same with a shaita and a cotton, that the sale does not take effect at all. But nevertheless, we can rely. Chachamim instituted that we should rely on him with a hint or with a gesture, with his hand, with his head, and so on. Ben Beseira says even more than this, kaifitz v'nikvatz, that he doesn't have to make a very clear gesture with his hand or with his head, even just by moving his lips. And his lips are, the kaifitz means the movement of his lips, or like what's you mouth the words with the lips. That itself could also be relied upon, even though it's not as clear as a remez when he signals with his hand or with his head. But even that could also be relied upon. And this whole takana was regarding a sale of items, of movable items. Ha'pa'utais, little children, mekchan mekach, umemkara memker. Their sale is a sale. When they buy something, they could also buy something. So again, this is a takana mid'Rabbanan, menatayre, a cotton has no das for a kinyan. And this is all b'metaltalin. Chachamim instituted this for these children, and the Gemara will say what 8 children we're talking about, only regarding metaltalin. So the Gemara Rav Nachman, so Rav Nachman explained, the Machlaikis here in the Mishnah, Ben Beseira came and said that the takana for a cheresh, he doesn't have to make a clear remez with his hands or his head, but it's enough the movement of his lips. So this Machlaikis is been metaltalin, regarding a sale and regarding metaltalin. Avu begittin, however, when it comes to a get, if there's a get from a cheresh, and when is there a get of a cheresh? So we're talking over here about a person that got married as a cheresh. He got married as a cheresh, which is also only a takana midrabbanan. And I'll tell you, he can't get married. Chachamim were mesakin that he can get married. So in such a case, divri akol b'remiza. Everybody would agree that the get will not be a kosher to get unless he shows clear gestures with his hands or his head, and it's not enough just the movement of his lips. Right? And as Rashi explains, he got married not by talking. He got married b'remiza because he was a cheresh when he got married, so it wasn't a marriage minat Torah. So the divorce could also be similarly with a remiza. Okay, but obviously, if he got married minat Torah, this wouldn't work b'chlal. So the Gemara says, Pshita, isn't what Rav Nachman is saying obvious? B'metaltalin Tanah. In the Mishnah, when Ben Beseira says his opinion, the Mishnah clearly spells out that the whole leniency that you could rely just on the movement of lips is only from metaltalin. Says the Gemara, no, it's not a raya from the lashon of the Mishnah, because Ma'al Detema, I would think to say, af b'metaltalin, that Ben Beseira came to be mechadish, that even by metaltalin, we could rely on the movement of his lips. And it's needless to say that you could rely so regarding a get. And the reason for this is, Rashi says, because just like you would say that he got married through a remez, through a gesture of his hands or his head, so too he can get divorced and rely on the same remez. You can also think to say that by a get, if he got married just with the movement of his lips, relying in the communication of the movement of his lips, so he can get divorced in the same way as well. Right? So that's been a get to a gedishin. So for sure, by metaltalin, you can say the same thing. That by again, not for sure. Okay, by metaltalin, it's a big chiddush. By metaltalin, over here, it's not a situation where it began with a remez or it began with a movement of his lips. Over here now, he wants to make a new sale. He wants to make a new acquisition. So over here, it is saying even by metaltalin, you could also rely just on the movement of his lips. That's how I would learn pshat in the Mishnah. Kamash Malon, that's what Rav Nachman is saying, that no, Dafke by Metaltalin he was lenient, but when it comes to a get, over there it is a greater stringency. Mefarshim point out that B'chlal ben a get to a get, it's much more difficult to give a get than for Kiddushin. By a get, there's many different halachas and details that the husband has to agree to when he gives the get in order that it should be a kosher get. So by a get, they were more machmer. Ikadamri, but there are others that actually had an opposite version and said that no, that by a get is a svara to be more lenient. So Amar Rav Nachman, what Rav Nachman said is, Kamachloikis ben metaltalin, just like Ben Beseda argues regarding metaltalin, that you can rely on the movement of the lips, Kach Machloikis ben Gittin. It's the same argument regarding a get, and Ben Beseda came to say that even for a get, you can rely just on the movement of the lips. But in the Mishnah it says that he only said his chiddush regarding the movement of the lips regarding when he's selling metaltalin. And says the Gemara, Eime after metaltalin. When it says the Mishnah metaltalin, it's not only metaltalin. It's telling you even by metaltalin, you could also be makel to rely on the movement of the lips. But needless to say by a get, because you got married this way, so you get divorced this way. Over there it's not such a big chiddush as a new sale by metaltalin. The next thing in the Mishnah was apuutais mekcha mekach umemkara memker bimetaltalin. That little children Chachamim instituted for them that their sale or their acquisition should be in effect for metaltalin. Now vat kama, how low of an age do you go down to say that for children it takes effect? Machvir Rav Yehuda Rav Yitzchak Berei, so Rav Yehuda pointed to his son Rav Yitzchak when he was a child, kivar shis kivar shev, like about 6 or 7 years old. So in all the ages the Gemara here is going to bring, it says 2 different ages. Here it says 6 and 7. So the Ramuki Yosef says it says 6 and 7 because for a girl, her maturity is at the age 6, and for a boy, his maturity is at the age of 7, that the sale will be a sale. Rav Kahana Amar, Kivar Shev, Kivar Tmani. It's age 7 or 8. The Masnita Tana in a Braisa it says Kivar Tesha, Kivar Eser, about 9 or 10. V'loi Pligi. And all these different ages that are given here, they're not arguing. Each one of them gave the age according to the sharpness of the child. If the child is intelligent enough at age 6, so then the kinyan is from that age. If not, it's from an older age. Now, the time am I? Why did Chachamim institute that a child should be able to make a kinyan? If it would be necessary for him to buy and sell for what he needs to live. That's why Chachamim instituted this. So here the Gemara makes an interruption and brings an unrelated subject, and the only reason the Gemara brings it here is because we just quoted a statement from Rab Abba Bar Yaakov in the name of Rabbi Yechanan. So this is another thing that Rab Abba Bar Yaakov in the name of Rabbi Yechanan explained. So there's a pasuk that says, "Vayomer la'asher al hamaltocha." He said, and this is the king Yehu. He said to the one that was al hamaltocha, and this is the word that the Gemara is coming to explain. What does this word maltocha mean? Hoitze levush l'choloiv de abal. Go and take out garments for all those that are serving the Avodah Zarah of the Baal. The pasuk there says that Yehu had them all dressed in these unique garments, and all in order to be able to identify them later, because he wanted to kill out all the Ovdei HaBaal. But now the question is, my maltocha. What is this maltocha? Amar Abba Bar Yaakov, Amar Rabbi Yechanan. Maltocha is a combination of 2 words. Davar, this is a garment, hanimlal v'nimtach, which is rolled and stretched out. When you make this garment, so it's rolled and then it's stretched out, that's what it means. And it's a specific kind of a garment. The Gemara will bring here another place where we see what this garment was. Ki yasser Rav Dimi, Amar Rabbi Yechanan, Rav Dimi came and said in the name of Rabbi Yechanan that Shigirloi, Bunyim ben Nunyim. There was an individual, apparently a rich person, and the name of Bunyim ben Nunyim. So he sent Rebbe the following garments. Sivni, V'chaimis, Salsala, Ulmalmala. 4 different kind of linen garments. Now, Sivni v'chaimis, these 2 garments, Sivni and Chaimis, ka'amguze o palge damguze. When you rolled it up and folded it up, it was so fine and so thin that even though the garment was the size of Rebbe, it fit him. But nevertheless, when you folded it up, you were able to fold it to the size of a nut and a half. That's how thin and good it was. And Salsala, Umalmala, also 2 very thin linen garments, ki piskese, so it could also be folded up like a small nut. Not sure exactly what nut this is. What do they have over there? I think I saw a pistachio nut, maybe another nut. It could be folded up also to like a nut and a half because of its thinness, of its fineness. Acorn they have there? Okay, an acorn. Okay, so now here as well, the Gemara teaches one of these garments, my malmala. What is the meaning of the word malmala? Davar an nimlo v'nimtach. It's this garment, when it's made, it's rolled in the hand and it's also stretched out. That's this unique garment, and similar also in the pasuk maltacha. Okay, going back here to the halacha of the kinyan of a cotton. V'ta'usan at kama. When there's a kinyan, the sale of a cotton, up until what amount, a mistake in the price, whether in the sale or in buying, up until what price do we say that if he makes a mistake, that the kinyan is bottled? Says the Gemara, it's the same halacha as a gadol, that if the mistake is made at a sixth in the price was a mistake, so then what's the halacha? So then the sale is in effect, but you have to give back that difference of money. And if the mistake is more than a shtos, so then the whole sale is bottled. Same exact thing for a cotton. Baya asked the shaila, matnosei mai. How about a gift? Could a cotton give a gift? So we're talking about a cotton buying and selling, and as the Gemara said, it's all for the purpose of the cotton being able to live, so to buy what he needs. But a gift, the question is that also Chachamim included that as well? So Rashi says, we had before in the Gemara, that maybe for a cotton it's important to have him, give him the ability to give a gift for someone that's doing him a favor. It's also something that's beneficial for him. So they include a matana as well. Rav Yemer said, no. When he gives a gift, it doesn't take effect. But Ravashi Omar matnase matana. That he gives a gift, it does take effect. Now the Gemara here says, Afchua, these two opinions that were quoted here, the names were exchanged. So they said that Mar Baravashi was the one that said that it's not a gift. And the Shadrua lekamed Rav Mordechai. And they sent this halacha to Rav Mordechai. And they were asking Rav Mordechai, who's the halacha like? Do we paskin like this? Like which one of these opinions do we paskin like? Amalei, so Rav Mordechai, which was a student of Rav Ashi, sent them back a message and said, Zilu Omru Levar Mar, go tell the master, go tell the son of the master, that's Mar Baravashi. So as I said, Rav Mordechai learned by Rav Ashi himself. So he sent back the message to Mar Baravashi, that it was quoted to him that Mar Baravashi said that for a cotton it's not a matana. So go tell the son of the master that Lav Hachi Hava Ovda. Isn't this the story that happened? That Ki Havakoi Mar Chadkareya Arav Chadkareya Darge. When his father, when our master, the Rav Ashi himself, when he was standing and he was 1 foot was on the ground and 1 foot was on a step and he was walking up. And there in that position, Rav Mordechai asked him the question, Matnosei mai, what's with the matana of a cotton? And Rav Ashi answered us, Matnosei matana, that the matana does take effect. Right? So therefore, he was saying that Mar Baravashi should know that this is what his father said. But really, they exchanged their opinions. Mar Baravashi Taka did say like that, like his father said. Now the Gemara concludes, and this is Achas Matna Shchiv Mira. This he said that this refers both to whether he gives the matana as a shchiv mira when he's about to pass away. Chachamim instituted that takana of a matana, this takes effect for a child as well. V'achas matna's body, a child that's healthy that gives a matana. Achas matana merube, whether he gives a matana which is a large matana, v'achas matana muetes, or even whatever it is, a small matana as well. In any case, they were misakin the koyach for a cotton to give a matana. Okay, but this is all, Taisus points out that we saw in the Mishnah, it said this is all just for metaltalin. But for a karka, they did not institute that a cotton could sell and buy and do business. The following things Chachamim instituted and said, Nipnei Darki Shalom, in order for there to be peace. And the first thing is, Kayin Kaire Rishain, when it comes to reading from the Torah, the aliyahs of the Torah, so the Kayin is the one that reads first, as it was in those times of the Gemara, the one that had the aliyah read from the Torah. So the Kayin is first, V'achrav Levi, second aliyah is for the Levi, V'achrav Yisrael, and the third goes to the Yisrael. And the reason for this is, Mipnei Darki Shalom, in order that there should be an order in the first 3 aliyahs for peace. No one should fight for the first aliyah because it goes to the Kayin. Another thing they instituted for Darki Shalom, Ma'arvin, V'bayis Yoshan, Mipnei Darki Shalom. When it comes to Eruvei Chatzeris, so when you have many houses in one chotzer, so you can't carry out from the bayis to the chotzer because the bayis belongs to one individual and the chotzer is shared by everybody. So Chachamim instituted that you can't carry unless you put food into one house, that it's as if everyone is living in that one house. So where do you place the food? So in order for there not to be arguing about this, Chachamim instituted that you place it in the house that it always was placed in from before. Another thing Chachamim instituted is boyer shehu karev la'amo. A boyer, a pit of water that's near the fields that is coming from a stream of water. So basically, they had a river of water, and then they made
irrigation channel.
the irrigation channels of water that came near the fields and was passing through all the fields. Right? But now each individual, by his field, they would dig a deeper pit in order to fill up that pit with water. So if there won't be enough water, if it'll dry up, they'll have an extra storage of water there. So the institution of Chachamim was that Mismale Rishain, the one that's first, he's the one that fills up his pit first, and Mipnei Darkei Shalom, and for Darkei Shalom. So let's say you have a bunch of different properties, and there's the irrigation channel is coming from on top of the hill, and it's flowing downward. So the one that's on the top, and to him it comes first, he could be the first one to divert the water into his pit, and then the second one, and then all the others next. So there shouldn't be any arguments about this, who gets to divert the water into his pit first. They instituted that the one that the water comes to him first has the first right to do so. Another thing Chachamim instituted for Darkei Shalom Mitzuda is Chaye v'oifes v'dogim. You have traps that trap an animal or birds or fish. So yesh b'em mishum gezel. When it's trapped and a person's trapped, and as the Gemara will explain, even in such a oifim where it's not fully trapped over there in a way that you actually acquired it minat Torah, but nevertheless Chachamim instituted that no one should take it for you b'fnei Darkei Shalom, so people shouldn't come to fight. Rabbi Yosi says gezel gomer. This is complete gzela. He doesn't mean to say minat Torah, it also means midrabanan, but Rabbi Yosi here is coming to say that when Chachamim instituted that you shouldn't take it away, it's not stam Darkei Shalom. They considered it to be 100% yours, they gave it to you, that you zeiche in it, and therefore it becomes gezel gomer. Similar regarding the other cases here, as we'll see. Mitzias chere shoyte v'katan. If a chere shoyte or a cotton that have no das to acquire anything minat Torah, if they find an item, so then yesh b'em mishum gezel. Chachamim instituted that they find it and it becomes theirs. And if you take it from them, so then there's gezel, but that's only mipnei Darkei Shalom. Rabbi Yosi says gezel gomer. Chachamim consider it to be 100% his, and it's gezel gomer. A poor person that is picking olives from the top of a tree, and this belongs to him. The halachas of what has to go to the poor person. So he's picking these olives, and as he's picking these olives, there are olives that fall down to the ground. Mashatachta, what falls down to the ground, gezel. If you take it away from him, it's also gezel mipnei Darkei Shalom, in order for people not to fight with him. Rabbi Yosi says, furthermore, gezel gomer. Chachamim instituted that it's his mamish and it's gezel. The last halacha here, ein memachin b'yadaniye oivde kechavim beleket shikcha peya. When the Yiddish aniyim go around to get their leket shikcha peya from the properties of the Yidden, right? So that's the different halachas of what belongs to a poor person, the property of a Yid. So if you have the goyish aniyim that come along with the Yidden as well, so we don't protest against them, mipnei Darkei Shalom, in order to keep the peace.
So the poor person is allowed to go pick it.
Together with Oivdei Kechavim, Goyish Ani Oivdei Kechavim as well. That's the point there. Okay, so now the Gemara will begin with the halacha of the aliyah, giving the aliyah to the kohen first. No, Anamili, what's the source for this? Amar Rav Masna, so Rav Masna says, the Makra, the pasuk says, Vayichtav Moshe es HaTorah Zeis. Moshe Rabbeinu writes this Torah, and then Vayitno al HaKoyanim b'nei Levi. He gives it to the Koyanim b'nei Levi, and he gives it to them to read from it first. So Atu Anala Yadaina the Koyanim b'nei Levi ninu. Do I not know that the Koyanim come from Shevet Levi? Why does the pasuk spell out here b'nei Levi? Elo, what it's saying is Kohen Bereisha. The Kohen reads first, and Vahad Levi, and afterwards comes the Levi. So in this pasuk you actually see a source for both. That first comes the Kohen, and then second is the Levi. Rabbi Yitzchak Nafcha says Mehacha. You learn it from this pasuk here. V'nikshu haKoyanim b'nei Levi. That the Koyanim b'nei Levi come close over there to bench the Yidden, or to serve in the Beis HaMikdash. So over here again, the Gemara says, Oto anan lo yadina the Koyanim b'nei Levi ninu. Do I not know the Koyanim come from Shevet Levi? Elo Kohen Bereisha v'hada Levi. First comes the Koyanim and then Levi. Ravashi Amar Meyacha, it says in the pasuk, and this is a pasuk in Divrei Hayamim, b'nei Amram. Who are the children of Amram? Aaron u'Moshe. Vayavdel Aaron la'Gdishay Kodesh Kadoshim. And the Eibush separated Aaron, or Vayivadel, he separated Aaron from Moshe, that he becomes Kodesh Kadoshim. So we see here in this pasuk that from Shevet Levi, Aaron was separated to be holy. So therefore he has to be first. We learn out from this pasuk where it says, V'kidashtoi, that you should sanctify the Kohen, l'chol davar shebekdusha, for every matter of kedusha. And it's learned out from, it says V'kidashtoi, and then the pasuk there continues and says Ki kodesh, Kodesh Yalach, that the Kohen should be Kodesh for you. So you learn it from there that he's holier than everyone else. Now, Tana de Rabbi Shmuel, in the Braisa by Rabbi Shmuel, they learned, V'kidashtoi means l'chol davisha b'kedusha, for any matter of kedusha, which means l'ftoyach rishain. He's the one that gets to speak first in any matter, whether it's in Torah or anything else. The kohen gets to speak first. Or l'varech rishain, regarding benching, he's the one that's on it first to bench. V'litoil mana yafer rishain, and also when they give out food for, in any case, you give it out for the kohen first. There's actually a discussion in Mefarshim about this because it says here l'chol davisha b'kedusha. And then it says this little money yafirishan doesn't seem to be a davish of B'kedusha. Okay. Amalei Abaye let Rav Yosef. Now, based on all of these sources that we just brought here, so Abaye asks Rav Yosef on the Mishnah. What did the Mishnah say? Why does the Kohen get the first aliyah? Mipnei darke shalim. So why is the Mishnah saying that it's a Chachamim instituted this for peace? This is learned out from here from Psukim in the Torah. Amalei. So he answered him. Rav Yosef answered him. You're right. It's learned out from these Psukim. But because when Torah said so, the reason Torah said Kayin comes first is in order that it should be peaceful. So he answered, he asked him, but if you're saying that the reason Torah is saying so because the inyan of peace, that's not only this inyan, all mitzvahs are also for the inyan of shalom. As it says regarding Torah, the Torah's ways are pleasant, and all the pathways of Torah is peace. The whole inyan of Torah, as it says, the Torah is given in the world to make shalom ba'ilam, which refers to really to the peace between the Eibishter and his world, to bring the Eibishter into the world. So why are we saying dafke b'nigeh to the Kayin? So Abaye, so therefore Abaye says what our Mishnah is teaching us is an additional halacha. Not just the basic halacha that the Kayin comes first, that's Minat Torah, but there's an additional halacha here. And that is l'kidemar, like the master has said, which refers to Abaye's Rabbe. So the Tanya, so we learned in the Braisa as follows. Shnayim mamtinim zelazeh b'kaida. Two people are eating together from the same dish, so one should wait for the other to eat. If one goes out, so she wait for the other one, then only when they're there together, they're served together so they can eat. Shloisha, but if there are three people that are being served from the same dish, so then ein mamtinim. Even if one leaves, so the two that remain can eat without the third one there. Habitzeya, the person that is cutting the bread. This is the balabayas. He makes the bracha hamaitzi and he cuts the bread for everyone. And Rashi here says this is even if he's a cotton. Who paishit yadai tchila? He's the one that can take food first from the food that's on the table to eat together with the bread. Others say actually that it goes on the salt, to dip the bread into the salt, that he's the one that dips it first into the salt. Ve'imba lachloik kaved l'rabbai, oy l'mi shegadlo mimenu. Now, if this person that gets the first right here, the bitzeya, he's the one that can cut first and can eat first. So if he wants to, though, give honor to his teacher that's there with him or someone that's greater than him, he has the right to give someone else to the shus to take the food first. That's the halacha regarding when it comes to the right etiquette in eating. Now, on this, the master, which is Rabbah, had said, Allah on this, this is all said regarding a suda, that if the person, the balabas wants, he can give his teacher or a gadol the right to go and take and serve himself first. But in a shul, when it comes to the seder of the aliyahs to the Torah and the kohen is supposed to go first, over here the kohen can't be meichel and give the right to his teacher to go before him. Because then the moment the kohen could be meichel to someone else, so then this could cause fights, that you're meichel for him, you're not meichel for him. It brings back the problem, who should go first. So therefore, this is what the Mishnah was saying here, that the kohen shouldn't be meichel, and the reason is mipnei darke shalom. Now in this, the Gemara adds, Amarav Masne, Ha the Amrit bebeis hakneses loy. This that you said that in the shul regarding the aliyahs, so the kohen shouldn't be meichel lo yamaran ela b'shabbasos v'yamim tovim. That's only in Shabbos and Yom Tov where the shul is very full. So the shchichi rab, that many people, so it could cause fights. Avol b'sheni b'chamishi, but on a Monday and a Thursday where most people are out working and they're not there in the shul, so then like over there it doesn't apply. But to this, Taisus Avir adds from Rabbeinu Tam that today, or in his times already, because even on a Monday and a Thursday the shul is full, so a kohen can't be meichel to another person that's there in the shul. Like the Gemara, but Rav Huna Kari Bekani. We know that Rav Huna did read from the Torah. He did get the aliyah of kohen. B'Shabbos v'Yom Tov, and it was even on a Shabbos and a Yom Tov as well. Answers the Gemara, Shani Rav Huna. Rav Huna is different. Da'afil Rab Ami v'Ravasi Kahani Chashivi, the Eretz Yisrael. Even Rab Ami and Ravasi, they were the most prominent kohenim in Eretz Yisrael. Meichev Havakai Fili. They were subdued to Rav Huna, which was so great. So a person like Rav Huna, that is allowed. So because over there won't be any fights. Everybody understands that Rav Huna is so great. Okay, we see here from the Gemara that a Kohen can't be Meichel as Aliyah. I mean, today when we say Ein Kan Kohen, it's only if the Kohen walks out of the room. That's what if it's Stam to be Meichel. There's really no such a thing of a Kohen being Meichel as Aliyah here. Amar Abaye. Now Abaye said. So Abaye, no, it's an Ein Kan Kohen. It's a different thing. Okay. Abaye said Naktinon. So we know the following halacha. Ein shom koyin. What if there's no koyin present? So then nispar de chavilo. So then the knot of the way this is set up has been untied, which means, and there's actually a few pshatim of this. Rashi brings two pshatim. One pshat Rashi says is that now there's no order for even the Levi loses also his right to get first, and the Levi actually can't get an aliyah at all over here, not before, not after. If he's going to get before, then it's going to look like he's a kohen. If he's going to get after, so then people are going to say, why is he getting after the Yisrael? Is he not a Levi? That's one pshat Rashi says. Another pshat Rashi says, Nispar da Chavila means that you can give the Levi the aliyah, but not necessarily before. You can give it to him, the Yisrael could even go before the Levi. That's Rashi's pshat. But there are other Rishonim that say different pshatim on this. Okay, V'omer Abaye said, Naktinon. We know the halacha is that Ein Sham Levi, if there is no Levi there, Kaire Kayin. So then the Kayin reads. Okay, what does this mean? That if it comes to the aliyah of the Levi, so then the Kayin already got one aliyah. So then it comes to the aliyah of the Levi, the Kayin also reads again. The Gemara Eini, is this so? But for Rabbi Yochanan said, Kayin acha Kayin lo yikra. You shouldn't have an aliyah for one Kayin and then for the next aliyah a Kayin as well. We shouldn't pagam mishorishin, because then people may make the mistake and say, why are you giving a second Kayin the aliyah? It must be that the first Kayin has a blemish. He's not a good Kayin. And similar, Levi acha Levi lo yikra. You shouldn't give an aliyah for one Levi and then another Levi following him. Mishum pagam shneim. And here actually he says that there's a concern that you may say that there's a pagam to both of them. You don't know which one is the issue. You may say that there's a pagam in both of them. Okay, now the Gemara, so the question is, how could he say that the Kayin reads after the Kayin? So the Gemara answers, Ki kamrinan ba'oisei Kayin. What we do is, as we do today, if there's no Levi, so then the very same Kayin that read the first Aliyah gets the next Aliyah as well. But you can't bring a second Kayin, because then there'll be a chash to say that the first Kayin, pagam mishorishin, the first Kayin was not kosher. Now the Gemara addresses over here the difference in the lashon that it said regarding a Kayin and regarding the Levi. Ma'ishno Levi acha Levi. Why is it when it comes to giving an aliyah for a Levi and then another Levi, the ikke pagam shneim? Over here it said that people don't know which one of them is the issue. So we say that there could be a pagam. People might say that there's a pagam in either one of them. The Amri chad minayu lav Levihu. They're going to say one of them is not a kosher Levi. So if so, Kayin acha Kayin nami, by two Kayinim that get an aliyah one after the other should be the same thing. Amri chad minayu lav Kayinu. Isn't it the same concern for both of them? That people are going to say that one of them is not a good Kayin. Answers the Gemara, Kakayin the muchziklan ba'avua the high sheni the Kayin hu. Speaking about a case where we know for a fact that the father of the second Kayin is a Kayin without a pagam. So therefore there's no chashash regarding the second Kayin. So he said that the chashash is only on the first Kayin. Says the Gemara, but if that's what the case is with the first Kayin, there's a chazaka on his father, so Hachanami, the muchziklan bavua, the high sheni, the Levihu. So probably when he talks about the two Leviim, the case must be similar. That the Levi, the second Levi, we know for a fact that his father is a kosher Levi, so therefore there's no concern on him, only a concern on the first Levi, because he's the one that's unknown. So Ella, but what are you going to answer me? Even once you know that the father is a kosher Levi, that's not good enough, because Amri mamzeres aynesine nasiv. Maybe this Kayin or Levi, or this Levi here, married a mamzeres or a nesine, which is someone that's also to marry into Klal Yisrael, and then what happens? A pasle lazare, and then his child becomes pasel. So even if you know that the father is a kosher Levi, it still doesn't mean that this son here, getting the aliyah, is a kosher Levi. And that's why it said before that the concern is both for the first and even for the second Levi. So if so, Hachanami, the same should be by the Kayin, that even if you know that regarding the second Kayin, that his father was a kosher Kayin, but Amri, Grusha Chalutza Nasiv. Maybe the father married a Grusha or a Chalutza, and then Va'achle Lazare. And then what happens is, the Kayin that's born from such a marriage is a Kayin, a Chalal. He doesn't have a din of a Kayin B'chlal. He has the halacha like a regular Yisrael. So therefore, why shouldn't there be a concern of a Pagam for the first and even for this second Kayin? And says the Gemara, but sof, in the end though, the reason why there's no concern about the second Kayin, because Levi, Mika Have, would he be called up for Levi? If he's getting the aliyah of Levi, once this Kayin becomes a Halal, so then he has the halacha of a regular Yisrael. He's not a Levi either. So therefore, why is he getting a Levi? The fact that he's getting the aliyah of Levi, so that people will understand that he's not a Kayin which is a Halal. So then he must be a kosher Kayin like his father. So therefore, regarding the Kayin that gets the aliyah of Levi, there's no concern about him to say that people will say that he's not a kosher Kayin. Okay, now the Gemara just concludes the scene and says this whole thing that we said over here, that shouldn't give an aliyah for one Kayin after another Kayin, or for one Levi after another Levi, because people may say that the Kayin before had a pagam, ulaman. For who is this concern? Is it for the people that are sitting there in the shul and are staying for the whole Kriyas HaTorah? But hakachazile, they see over here what's going on. So what the Gemara is asking is, they see, as Rashi says, that there's only 7 aliyahs, and that even though you're giving one kain and then another kain, but there's just 7 aliyahs, they're not adding another aliyah over here. So it's understood that the first kain that got his aliyah is being counted. If you're going to give a kain after the first kain, because he's saying that the first kain was pasul or a pagam, so then you would have to have 8 aliyahs, because that means that the first kain was not a good aliyah, and then you have to give another aliyah for the other kain. But the fact, if a person stays in shul and sees everything, so he sees that we're counting the aliyah of the first kain, so for him there should be no problem. Ella says the Gemara, the problem is for those that were there in the beginning, and then they leave, they're not there to the end of Kriyas HaTorah, and they may think that there was 8 aliyahs there, and the first kain has a pagam. Here from this Gemara is also a makar for our minig that we don't add to the number of the aliyahs. If you add to the number of the aliyahs, so when you give more aliyahs, it doesn't prove anything. You won't say that, must be that the first kayin was pasul. You could add the aliyahs. Our minig is that we don't add to the number of the aliyahs. And that's the source of what the Gemara is saying here. Okay.